Good day again, everyone. I want to thank our sponsors for this month anonymously as a Zchut for Shleimo for Gittel Rivka Bat Esther Shifra Shetichya. Thank also our weekly sponsors Lun and Stuart Paul, Leinish Madyenta Rivka Bat Shmuel, and Yaakov Ben Yitzchak Aleim Shalom. Thank our weekly sponsors Sally and Ernie Levy, Leinish and their beloved son Kobe, Yaakov Nachmiel, Olav Shalom Ben, Tzadok Shimon Halevi, Yichya. Thank also Sandy Sivgratko sponsoring this month, Lina Shmat Shraga Feivel Ben Sender and Dina Bat Avraham. Chaim Yol Full sponsoring Lina Shmat their beloved son Hillel, Alvashom Ben Yol Yaakov Sheyichya, Julian Richard Ehrlich, Lina Shmat Rachel Miriam Bat Yona, Allah Shalom, and Marshall Weinblatt, Lina Shmat Gittel Bat Chaim Yisachar, and Chavariva Bat Aaron Yosef U Bracha. So we return again to Rav Hirsch and his understanding of the Mesorah in Rav Hirsch's collected writings, Volume 5, in which he demolishes the theses of Heinrich Graetz in his History of the Jews, as well as Zechariah Frankel's Darkei HaMishnah, Frankel being the founder of the so-called positive historical school of understanding the methodology of Torah, which was a precursor to conservative Judaism. But we start with an interesting insight from the Meshech Chochmah on the pasuk that's the prelude to Matan Torah. Vaydaber Elokim et kol hadrim eile lemor. God said all of these things, lemor sang. And Rameir Simcha said that lemor is different than its usage in the most frequent pasuk in the Torah. Vaydaber Hashem and Moshe lemor. God spoke to Moshe, saying lemor means go tell the Jewish people. But here it can't mean that because the Jewish people were listening to what God had to say. What's the lemor? The Meshech Chochmah says it's a mandate for all generations that all of Israel is now hearing, and everyone who heard at Sinai, Yomru Livnehem, Uvnehem Livnehem, Ad Et Ketzayamin, Matzav Har Sinai Vaser Hadvarim, that all the Jews who heard at Sinai, they're obligated, lemor, to tell what they heard and saw and the mitzvot of the Torah to their children and grandchildren and their children and grandchildren until the end of time, what they saw at Sinai and the Aseret Hadvarim. And of course, the Aseret Hadvarim doesn't just mean the Decalogue, doesn't the Ten Commandments, doesn't even mean the Taryag mitzvot. But like the Rambam says in his introduction to the Yad Chazaka, all the mitzvot that were given to Moshe at Sinai, beferush nitnu. Moshe was given the explanation, the interpretation, the details of the mitzvah. And that's a pasuk at the end of this week's Sedra. V'etno l'chad luchot ha'even v'torah v'mitzvah. God said to Moshe, send them out, I'll give you the luchot, the tablets, and the Torah and the mitzvah. Torah, the Rambam writes, is Torah Shebechtav, the written Torah. Mitzvah, zo perusha. That is the explanation without which the Torah is really incomprehensible. And as the Rambam describes what Moshe experienced on Har Sinai, God would say to Moshe, HaMitzvah, this is the commandment, v'achar kach omer lo perusha v'inyanah. Then God would tell Moshe exactly what the explanation was, what the matter is, what the subject is, in all its details. The heresy of Gretz and Frankel was to say not that the Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral Torah, is what was given to us at Sinai in conjunction with the written Torah, which is the foundation of all Torah understanding, but rather that the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, at a later stage in history, at the beginning of the Second Temple era, they were the ones who fabricated the oral law. They were the ones who, in their minds, created it, and they created the 13 principles by which the Torah is expounded as well. It means, according to them, all the details of the mitzvot are temporal. They're subject to the time of the people in which they were enacted, and therefore the mitzvot can be subject to this type of evolution over time. And Rav Hirsch emphasizes that Chazal didn't create these mitzvot, but they restored them, meaning all these principles are used in order they knew what the Torah Sheba'al Peh said, but now they wanted to link the Torah Sheba'al Peh to the Torah Shebechtav, the oral law, to the written law. And that's what they successfully did. At the beginning of this week's Sedra, Rav Hirsch in his commentary says very, very famously that the Torah shebichtav, the written Torah, to the oral Torah, is in the relation of short notes on a full and extensive lecture on any scientific subject. So a student that's heard the whole lecture, they just take a brief note and it recalls a paragraph or two, sometimes just a letter, sometimes something that's underlined or put in italics that reminds the student of the entire lecture. That's what the Torah shebichtav is. It's short notes that were given to us that comprises the entire Torah She'ba'al Peh, and that's the proper relationship. Rav Hirsch writes that, one of the criticisms of him, and it's 150 years ago, he was castigated viciously by much of the rabbinic establishment in Europe, saying, you're just fomenting strife, we have enough enemies, we need peace, etc. And he writes that every time we see emet and shalom together, peace and truth and peace, like ha'emet v'shalom ahavu, truth always comes first. Without truth, there can't be peace. And if you have peace without truth, you'll have neither peace nor truth. And in one of the conclusions, he says, what can be the future of the sort of Judaism for which students are being trained under the guidance of Dr. Frenkel and Dr. Gretz? In a little over a century and a half since he wrote these words, we understand quite well what type of students are being trained and what happened to the laymen that they themselves trained, a wave of assimilation and ignorance of Torah. We read Yitro Mishpatim, we should recover again a true sense of what the Mesorah is. Have a good day.